November. Indian Territory. A man in rags walks 28 miles through outlaw country. His boots are ruined. His hat has 3 bullet holes in it. He knocks on the door of a cabin where 2 wanted killers are hiding and asks their mother for a meal. She lets him in. He eats with men who would shoot a lawman on sight. He sleeps on their floor, and before dawn, quietly, he handcuffs both of them in their beds. The bullet holes in his hat, he put them there himself. That man wore a badge for 32 years. He brought in more than 3,000 fugitives, and most people have never heard his name. Because the deadliest men in the Old West weren't the outlaws. They were the ones hunting them. We love outlaw stories. Billy the Kid, Jesse James. But here's the uncomfortable truth the movies skip. In almost every famous shootout, the man with the badge walked away, and the outlaw went in the ground. You're about to meet 15 lawmen who were faster, colder, and more relentless than the men they hunted. A sheriff who killed 3 men with a rifle in under a minute. A 19-year-old who survived 4,000 bullets. A marshal so feared that, the story goes, the most famous female outlaw in America turned herself in rather than be hunted by him. And it ends with a man history buried for a century, a former slave who became by the numbers the most effective manhunter the West ever produced. Stay to the end. Number 1 will rewrite what you think you know. Number 15, Commodore Perry Owens, Holbrook, Arizona, September 4th, 1887. Owens, the new sheriff of Apache County, carries a warrant for a horse thief named Andy Cooper, a man tied to the bloody Pleasant Valley feud. Owens rides up to the Blevins family house alone, rifle in hand. He knocks. Cooper cracks the door with a pistol. What happens next lasts less than 60 seconds. Cooper fires, or reaches to. Owens shoots him through the door. A second man, John Blevins, fires from another doorway and misses. Owens shoots him too. A man named Mose Roberts comes out a side window. Owens drops him. Then Sam Houston Blevins, just 15, grabs his dying brother's pistol and charges out the front door. Owens kills him on the steps. 3 dead, 1 wounded. The sheriff walks away without a scratch. Here's the detail nobody mentions. The killings were so shocking that voters turned on him. Owens cleaned up the county and lost his job for it. That was the lawman's bargain. Be deadly enough to win, and the town may never forgive you. Number 14. Elfego Baca, 19 years old. October 1884, Frisco, New Mexico. A drunk cowboy was shooting up the Mexican side of town for fun. Nobody would act. So Baca, wearing a mail-order badge with no real authority, arrested him. The cowboy's friends demanded blood. By morning, around 80 armed men had Baca cornered in a tiny mud and timber shack called a jacal. Then they opened fire. The siege lasted roughly 33 hours. Witnesses estimated 4,000 rounds went into that shack. The door alone, later shown at his murder trial, had hundreds of bullet holes in it. So how did he survive? The floor was dug out below ground level. Baca lay in that depression, and the bullets passed over him. He shot back through the walls, killed at least 1 attacker, wounded others, accounts differ on the numbers, and, the legend says, he calmly cooked himself breakfast on the second morning while they were still shooting. When a truce was called, Baca walked out alive, stood trial for murder, and was acquitted. He spent the rest of his life as a sheriff, a U.S. Marshal, and a lawyer. The outlaws had 4,000 bullets. He had a mail-order badge. The badge won. Number 13. Jeff Milton, a Texas Ranger at 18, El Paso's chief of police, and a Wells Fargo Express guard. February 15, 1900. Fairbank, Arizona. A gang led by Three-Fingered Jack Dunlap hits the train Milton is guarding. And here's the twist. The robbery was planned by a corrupt lawman, Bert Alvord, a constable gone bad. A rifle bullet shatters Milton's left arm. He's bleeding out on the floor of the express car. Most men surrender there. Milton drags himself up, takes a shotgun in his one working arm, and blasts Dunlap off his feet, a wound that kills the outlaw within days. Then, as he's losing consciousness, Milton throws the keys to the safe into the darkness of the car. The gang can't open it. They flee with nothing. Milton's arm never fully worked again, but he wasn't done. Later, the government made him a mounted inspector on the Mexican border, which is why many call Jeff Milton the first Border Patrol agent in American history. One question, though, should be bothering you. If a constable like Alvord could go bad, how many men on this list stayed clean? Hold that thought. Number 12. Texas John Slaughter. When he became sheriff of Cochise County, Arizona in 1887, the same county that had chewed up the Earps 6 years earlier, Slaughter didn't give speeches. He gave notices. Leave the county or don't. He stood about 5'6". He carried a pearl-handled revolver and, more often, a shotgun. At home was the other half of the story, the dime novels never printed. His wife, Viola, 18 when she married him, 20 years younger, and by every account his equal. She rode beside him on the trail, ran the San Bernardino ranch when the county pulled him away, and once talked him out of a shootout by simply refusing to leave his side. The most feared sheriff in Arizona went home to the one person who wasn't afraid of him. And a pattern quickly emerged. Wanted men Slaughter went after had a strange habit of not coming back alive. The official report said, killed resisting arrest. How often that was the whole truth, historians still debate. What's documented is the result. Within a few years, the outlaw capital of the Southwest went quiet. Ranchers stopped losing cattle. Stages stopped being robbed. Slaughter went back to his San Bernardino ranch and lived out his days as a cattleman and state legislator. He never wrote a memoir. He barely gave interviews. Which tells you something. The loud ones made legends. The quiet ones made graves. Number 11. Chris Madson, a Danish immigrant who claimed he'd soldiered in Europe before ever seeing America. Historians still argue over how much of that is true. What's beyond dispute? He joined the U.S. 5th Cavalry, rode in the Indian Wars, and by 1891, he was a Deputy U.S. Marshal in Oklahoma Territory, one-third of a trio the newspapers called the Three Guardsmen. Madson, Hec Thomas, and Bill Tilghman. Together, they're credited with roughly 300 arrests, and with methodically dismantling the most dangerous outlaw crew in the territory, the Doolin-Dalton Gang. Madson was the relentless one. Outlaws learned that a Madson warrant was less like a piece of paper and more like a countdown. But the other two guardsmen have even bloodier claims on this list. One of them ended the Doolin gang with a single shotgun blast in the dark. That's next. Number 10. Hec Thomas. Georgia-born, an express guard who'd tangled with the Sam Bass gang, later one of Judge Isaac Parker's deputies, riding out of Fort Smith into Indian Territory, the deadliest beat in American law enforcement. Thomas survived it for years, then took his manhunting west to Oklahoma. His masterpiece came on the night of August 24, 1896, outside Lawson, Oklahoma Territory. Bill Doolin, the most wanted man in the territory, freshly escaped from the Guthrie jail with more than a dozen other prisoners, was walking his horse down a moonlit lane, leaving town with his family. Hec Thomas was waiting in the dark with a posse. He called on Doolin to surrender. Doolin answered with his Winchester. Thomas fired a shotgun, and the outlaw who had robbed banks and trains across 2 territories died in the road. Here's the lesser-known detail. The reward money that actually came through totaled about $1,400, roughly $50,000 today, and Thomas split it with every man in the posse. He didn't need the money. He needed Doolin. For men like Thomas, the hunt was the whole point. Number 9. Bill Tilghman, the 3rd Guardsman, and maybe the most respected lawman of them all. Here's what makes him different. His most famous capture involved no bullets at all. January 1896. Tilghman tracks Bill Doolin, yes, the same Doolin, to a health resort in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, where the outlaw is soaking his rheumatism in the bathhouses. Tilghman walks in disguise, and takes the most dangerous man in Oklahoma alive. No shots fired. That's how good he was. Doolin only died because he broke jail and Hec Thomas found him. Tilghman spent 50 years behind a badge. He arrested the teenage girl bandits Cattle Annie and Little Britches. He even made one of the first Western films in 1915, starring the real lawmen as themselves. And then comes the ending nobody saw coming. In 1924, at 70 years old, Tilghman was Marshal of the oil boom town of Cromwell, Oklahoma. He was disarming a drunk on the street when the man pulled a hidden second gun and shot him dead. The killer was a corrupt federal prohibition agent, a lawman. He was acquitted. Within weeks, Cromwell's entire vice district burned to the ground in the night. No one was ever charged with setting the fire. Number 8. Dallas Stoudenmire, El Paso, Texas, hired him as city marshal in April 1881, with one job: stop the killing. He lasted less than a year, but what a year. 4 days into the job came the gunfight remembered as 4 dead in 5 seconds. April 14, 1881. A street argument explodes. A constable named Krempkow is shot. Stoudenmire comes running, pulls both pistols, and starts firing. His first shot kills an innocent bystander. His next shots kill the man who shot Krempkow, then a former marshal who goes for his gun. 5 seconds. 4 bodies. 3 days later, allies of the dead men paid the town's own ex-deputy to ambush Stoudenmire with a shotgun. The man fired drunk and missed. Stoudenmire did not miss. Here's the detail casual fans don't know. One of Stoudenmire's 2 revolvers had the barrel cut down short, a concealed belly gun for exactly this kind of ambush. But his temper and his drinking made enemies faster than his guns could handle. He feuded with the Manning brothers, and in September 1882, they killed him in a saloon fight. The deadliest Marshal El Paso ever hired didn't die upholding the law, he died in a grudge. And that line is about to get much, much blurrier. Number 7. John Barclay Armstrong, Texas Ranger. In 1877, the most dangerous man in America was arguably John Wesley Hardin, a Texas gunman credited by legend with more than 40 killings, a man who allegedly once shot a stranger for snoring. The reward on him was $4,000, well over $100,000 today. Armstrong asked for the job of bringing him in, while still walking with a cane from a gunshot wound. August 23, 1877, Pensacola, Florida. Armstrong and local officers board a train where Hardin sits with 4 companions. Armstrong walks down the aisle with his Colt drawn. Hardin sees the long-barreled pistol and reportedly shouts, "Texas, by God." He knew a ranger's gun when he saw one. Hardin goes for his revolver, and here the accounts agree on one absurd detail. The gun tangles in his suspenders. One of Hardin's men fires, putting a bullet through Armstrong's hat. Armstrong kills him with a single shot, pistol whips Hardin unconscious, and disarms the other 3. On a bad leg, alone, against 5 armed men, and the deadliest gunman in Texas leaves in handcuffs. Hardin got 25 years. Armstrong got the reward, bought a ranch, and lived to old age. Deadlier than the outlaw doesn't always mean more bullets. Sometimes it means colder nerves. Number 6. And this is where the badge starts to blur. Mysterious Dave Mather. Legend claims he descended from the Puritan minister Cotton Mather. He worked as a lawman in Dodge City and New Mexico. He was also, at various times, suspected of train robbery and horse theft. Both may be true. That was the Old West's dirty secret. The skills were identical. Only the paycheck differed. In 1884, Mather lost his job as Dodge City's assistant marshal, and a saloon feud began with the man tied to his replacement, Tom Nixon. That July, Nixon took a shot at Mather on a staircase and missed. Mather didn't report it. He waited. 3 days later, on the night of July 21, 1884, Mather walked up behind Nixon at the corner of the Opera House and said his name. What happened in the next second is disputed, but Nixon died on the spot, and a jury ruled it justified, partly because Nixon had fired first, 3 days earlier. Then comes the part that earned Dave his nickname. Around 1887, he simply vanished. No grave, no obituary, no confirmed sighting, ever. One of the deadliest lawmen in Kansas walked out of history mid-sentence. So if the line between lawman and killer was that thin, what do we make of the most famous manhunter of all? The man who shot Billy the Kid. Number 5. John Reynolds Hughes, the border boss. Picture this. 1886. A Texas rancher wakes to an empty corral. His horses, gone. Driven off in the night by a crew of professional thieves heading west. Most men filed a complaint and ate the loss. Hughes packed a rifle, closed up his ranch, and rode after them. Not for a week, not for a season. By most accounts, he stayed on that trail for the better part of a year and more than 1,000 miles, through New Mexico, through country where a lone rider asking questions about armed men usually stopped coming back. Then one day he rode home, trailing his horses behind him. The thieves didn't. The Texas Rangers heard about it and made him an offer. Do that for us, for pay. He said yes, and for the next 28 years he did. Captain of Company D, on the bloodiest stretch of the Rio Grande, running informants on both banks of a river that outlaws believed made them untouchable. His gunfights were rarely witnessed and rarely discussed. That silence did more work than any body count. In 1915, Zane Grey dedicated the Lone Star Ranger to Hughes and his company. The fictional Rangers got the fame. The real one got 28 years of border war, and a name most viewers are hearing today for the first time. Number 4. Pat Garrett. In November 1880, Lincoln County, New Mexico elected the 6'4" former buffalo hunter as sheriff, with one unspoken job description: stop Billy the Kid. In December, Garrett trapped the kid's gang in a rock cabin at Stinking Springs and took him alive. Billy was tried, sentenced to hang, and then, in April 1881, he killed both of his guards and escaped, the most famous jailbreak in Western history. So Garrett hunted him again. On the night of July 14, 1881, at Fort Sumner, Garrett sat in the dark bedroom of a rancher named Pete Maxwell, asking where the kid was hiding. And then, footsteps. Billy himself walked into the dark room, sensing a stranger, asking in Spanish, "¿Quién es?" Who is it? Garrett recognized the voice and fired twice. Billy the Kid died at 21, and Garrett's promised reward was $500, barely $15,000 today, for the most famous manhunt of the century, and even that payment was disputed and delayed. But here's what the movies leave out. Killing the kid ruined Garrett. Half the territory called him a coward for firing in the dark. He drifted through failed ranches and debts for decades. And in February 1908, on a lonely road outside Las Cruces, someone shot Pat Garrett in the back of the head. A young rancher confessed, claimed self-defense, shooting a man from behind, and a jury took 15 minutes to acquit him. Historians still argue over who really wanted Garrett dead. The man who killed the West's most famous outlaw was killed like one. Nobody hanged for it. Number 3. James Butler Hickok, Wild Bill. You know the legend, so start with the part nobody tells. The most feared gun in Kansas killed his own deputy, and by every serious account, he never fought another gunfight. Abilene, October 5, 1871. Marshal Hickok kills the gambler Phil Coe in a street confrontation. Then he sees a figure rushing at him through the gun smoke. He spins and fires, and kills his own friend and deputy, Mike Williams, coming to help him. To understand what that moment destroyed, you have to understand what Hickok was. A deputy marshal, then marshal of two of the most dangerous towns in Kansas, Hays and Abilene. The man who invented the showdown itself. In July 1865, in the town square of Springfield, Missouri, Hickok and a gambler named Davis Tutt faced each other at about 75 yards over a debt and a pocket watch, drew, and fired. Tutt missed. Hickok didn't. Most historians call it the first recorded one-on-one quick-draw duel in the West, the showdown every movie is copying. As marshal, Hickok policed cattle towns full of armed, drunk Texans through pure fear. Dime novels claimed he'd killed hundreds. The documented number is closer to 7. It didn't matter. The reputation did the work, right up until the night it cost him Mike Williams. 5 years later in Deadwood, his eyes failing, playing poker with his back to a door, something he never used to allow, he was shot in the back of the head, holding aces and eights. The most feared gun in Kansas wasn't beaten by a faster man. He was beaten by grief, and a coward behind him. Number 2. Wyatt Earp. Start with the fact the movies never touch. In 1871, as a young man, Wyatt Earp was arrested in Indian Territory for horse theft and jumped bail. The most celebrated lawman in American history began on the wrong side of a warrant. Now add the fact that makes him almost supernatural. In a lifetime of gunfights, Earp was never wounded by a bullet, not once, as far as any record shows. Men died all around him, including his own brothers. He walked through it untouched. October 26, 1881, a vacant lot beside the OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona. 30 shots in about 30 seconds. 3 cowboys dead. Both of Wyatt's brothers wounded, Doc Holliday grazed, and Wyatt standing there without a scratch. But the gunfight isn't why he's this high on the list. It's what came after. When ambushers maimed his brother Virgil and murdered his brother Morgan, Wyatt stopped being a lawman in any meaningful sense, while still carrying a Deputy U.S. Marshal's badge. In the spring of 1882, he led the vendetta ride, hunting the men he blamed and killing them one by one, starting with Frank Stilwell in a Tucson rail yard. He was wanted for murder in Arizona and never stood trial. So was he the law or a killer with federal paperwork? Remember where he started. The line between outlaw and lawman wasn't just thin. Some men crossed it in both directions. Earp outlived them all, died in Los Angeles in 1929, and Hollywood Cowboys carried his casket. But he was never by the numbers the deadliest man to wear a badge. That title belongs to a man Hollywood ignored for 100 years. Number 1. Remember the man in rags from the beginning, sleeping on the floor of the killers he'd come to arrest? His name was Bass Reeves. And by the verifiable numbers, he is the most effective lawman the Old West ever produced. Reeves was born enslaved in Arkansas in 1838, the legal property of a Texas farmer. During the Civil War, the details are murky, and Reeves kept them that way. He broke free and escaped into Indian territory. He lived among the Creek, Seminole, and Cherokee nations for years. He learned their languages, he learned the land, he learned to shoot so well that, the story goes, he was barred from competitive turkey shoots. Then, in 1875, everything changed. A federal judge named Isaac Parker took over the court at Fort Smith, Arkansas, with jurisdiction over Indian territory, 74,000 square miles of the most lawless country in America, where more than 100 deputy marshals would die in the line of duty. Parker's marshal needed men who knew that territory. Bass Reeves, a former slave who couldn't read or write, was commissioned as one of the first black deputy U.S. marshals west of the Mississippi. Think about what that meant in 1875. 10 years out of bondage, carrying federal warrants into a wilderness full of men who'd kill him for the badge, the bounty, or the color of his skin. He did that job for 32 years. The numbers are almost unbelievable, so let's be careful with them. Over 3 decades, Reeves is credited with more than 3,000 arrests. He killed, by his own count, 14 men, every one, he insisted, in the line of duty. He was ambushed. His hat was shot off, his belt was shot in 2, he was never seriously wounded. Because he couldn't read, he'd have someone recite each warrant until he had it memorized, and witnesses swore he never once served the wrong paper on the wrong man. He was a master of disguise, a beggar, a farmhand, even a cowboy driving stolen cattle. That 28-mile walk in rags from the cold open, the story goes he collected 2 outlaw brothers and a $5,000 reward, well over $150,000 today, and the fear he inspired reached the top of the outlaw world. According to a story Oklahoma old-timers told for decades, when Belle Starr, the famous bandit queen, learned the warrant for her arrest was in Bass Reeves's pocket, she rode to Fort Smith and turned herself in rather than be hunted by him. Then came the test no other lawman on this list ever faced. Late in his career, Reeves's own son Benny killed his wife in a rage and fled. The other deputies didn't want the warrant. Bass Reeves, the accounts say, quietly called it his responsibility. He tracked his own son for 2 weeks, brought him in alive, and watched him sentenced to life. It's said he never discussed it again. So here's the payoff to the question we started with. Why was the deadliest lawman in the West nearly erased? Part of the answer is 1907. When Oklahoma became a state, its new Jim Crow laws pushed black officers out of authority. Bass Reeves, 68 years old, 32 years a federal marshal, finished his career walking a beat as a city policeman in Muskogee. It's said no crime was ever committed on his beat. He died in 1910, and the newspapers that had once called him the greatest manhunter in the territory let his story go cold. White lawmen got the dime novels, the films, the TV shows. Reeves got a paragraph. One more thing, and historians genuinely argue about this. A lawman working Indian territory, riding a light-colored horse, a master of disguise with a native companion, and a code against killing when he could avoid it. Some scholars believe Bass Reeves helped inspire the Lone Ranger. The evidence is circumstantial, and serious historians remain split. But even if he wasn't the model for the legend, the truth is better than the legend. The outlaws robbed trains and made headlines. The man who scared them wore a badge, couldn't read the warrants he carried, and never came back empty-handed. Hollywood taught us the West was won by outlaws with charisma and lawmen with white hats. The record says otherwise. The lawmen were often the better killers. That's precisely why they were hired. And when the shooting stopped, the towns often turned on them. Owens voted out. Garrett shot in the back. Tilghman gunned down by a fellow officer. The myth of the West needed clean heroes, so it sanded these men down or wrote them out entirely. You've been watching these 15 men for years without knowing it. Kurt Russell's Wyatt Earp in Tombstone, The Vendetta Ride, scrubbed into righteousness. Seth Bullock in Deadwood, the sheriff whose temper is deadlier than the criminals. That's Stoudenmire's story with the serial numbers filed off. Woodrow Call and Gus McCrae in Lonesome Dove, old rangers who can't tell anymore where the law ends and they begin. That's Hughes, that's Armstrong. And the masked rider with the code against killing? You already know who some scholars think he started as. And only in 2023 did television finally give Reeves his own name. In Lawmen, Bass Reeves. A bridge across the Arkansas River carries his name now. A bronze statue rides in Fort Smith. It took 100 years. 15 men. One lesson. The difference between the most feared outlaw and the most feared lawman was often nothing more than a piece of tin, and which side of the warrant your name was on. The deadliest men chose the badge, but the lawmen were only half the story. Judge Isaac Parker, the man who sent Bass Reeves into Indian Territory, sentenced more men to hang than any judge in American history, from a courthouse whose jail they called Hell on the Border. That story is on screen now. If tonight's ride was worth your time, subscribing is how you catch the next one.